We'll start on a personal aspect. You've been described as feisty, a man with a big ego, a hard worker. What kind of man are you? What's your personality like?
Man don't have an ego. He don't have any money, and he doesn't have any ambition. Certainly I got an ego.
How large of an ego? Egomaniac?
Sufficient to do the job that I want to do, which means you have to have an imagination. And if you don't have an imagination, then you'll be working for somebody the rest of your life. Imagination goes in our business, the labor business, as the innovations of new ideas for the labor unions, like pension, welfare, and dental eyeglass, the whole shot. When you talk about feisty, of course, what the hell do you think? Somebody's going to push me? I don't get pushed. And if that's feisty, of course, if somebody argues with me, I take them on. If somebody wants to wrestle with me, well, take them on too.
How old are you now?
62.
62. You think in the last 20 years you've become feistier?
No.
Mellow?
As a matter of fact, a little less feistier.
You've mellowed with old age?
No, I wouldn't say I'm mellow. I would just say I got more common sense than I had before. I used to take anybody on. Now I select who I take on.
In 1963, when Playboy interviewed you in the international office in Washington, they asked you how much you were worth. And
They never interviewed me.
Yeah, they did. October of 63, the interview appeared.
I can't remember any of that.
And your comment was, that's what Kennedy's trying to find out, and you laughed. You talk about your wealth now?
No, I would say I don't have to have a tag day. I think I'll be able to eat, live comfortable for the rest of my life, but so far as what I have, let it speak for itself. It's been in the press.
Millionaire? Obviously.
I would say.
Billionaire?
I don't care to comment on it.
Zillionaire?
I don't care to comment on that.
That's one of your favorite terms, isn't it?
Just say that I have sufficient money that I don't think myself or my family will want for anything.
You told me once that you and Jimmy Jr. got into a discussion about money.
Mm-hmm.
And your comment was, how many men can come up with $2 million cash now?
I would say it exactly right. How many men, I'll say, put it to you this way, today, because of what's happened. How many men cannot come up with $2 million, as I said then? How many million men today can come up with $100,000 cash? I just read an article the other day, in one of the financial letters I get, where they estimate that there's less than 1/2% of people who have over $50,000 liquid cash that they can lay their hands on overnight. And that applies to millionaires and I'd like to say sometimes zillionaires. They don't have liquid assets. They have assets which are paper assets, and they go up and down overnight.
What are you living for today?
For the sake of living, I enjoy every minute of it. Good, bad, or indifferent, I enjoy life every day, and I'm looking forward in enjoying that life to be part of the labor movement.
Jimmy spoke matter-of-factly about the events leading up to his release from prison and the 1980 restriction. Hoffa believed that President Nixon and Attorney General John Mitchell knew nothing about the 1980 restriction, quietly added to Hoffa's commutation by John Dean, a key Nixon aide and attorney, and Charles Colson, another Nixon aide who later became a Teamster lawyer. Dean and Colson were the key Nixon men Frank Fitzsimmons needed to keep Jimmy Hoffa out of the Union. Also playing a role against Jimmy, he said, was Clark Mullenhoff, a reporter from Iowa who was always attacking Hoffa, charging wholesale corruption in the Teamsters, and who a decade earlier had convinced Bobby Kennedy that the Teamsters and Jimmy Hoffa were worth investigating. How did you and Fitzsimmons split? What brought it about?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, when I found out that Fitzsimmons lied when he said he had been constantly talking to Mitchell trying to get me out.
This is after you were convicted and after you went to prison?
Yeah.
All right.
And after I got out of prison, all during the time I was in prison when Mitchell was there, he kept telling everybody, my son, my lawyers, all the union representatives, now don't do anything, you'll rock the boat, I'm taking care of Mitchell. Well, when we took Mitchell's deposition, he said the first time Fitzsimmons ever talked about me was in June 1971, when I'd already resigned and ready and give Fitzsimmons a green light to become president. And then when I found out that he had put Colson on, instead of, and fired Ed Bennett Williams, and then when I found out I had a 1980 restriction, it didn't take a ton of bricks to fall on me and put two and two together. They've been lying all along.
He said he's going to work on Mitchell. What was he going to do?
He claimed, all of them, he implied to the whole convention, that he was responsible for me getting a rehearing on my parole, and that Mitchell was going to take executive action and have me leave the prison. Well, when we took the deposition, Mitchell said, I talked to Fitzsimmons about Hoffa, amongst other things, in June 1971. Well, it was a complete flat lie he'd been telling everybody in the union for a period of almost 5 years.
How did your parole come about?
Well, I've said it and I say it again. My parole came about from the standpoint of over 1.5 million signatures to the President of the United States, the rank and file members, the Teamsters, and their friends. Came about by hundreds of thousands of letters going into the President, the Attorney General, to the senators and congressmen in direct, seeking my release, and by hundreds of people who went to Washington personally, trying to see their senators, congressmen, or the Attorney General or the President to get me released. And facing the coming convention, and facing the election after the convention, he didn't want, in my opinion, to have to answer to all those people that he had said to them, I won't do anything at all, and I reject your request. So he met with Mitchell, according to Mitchell, and according to his affidavit, and they discussed the release of one James R. Hoffa. And it was agreed I would be released before Christmas. And he left it up to Mitchell. Mitchell got a hold of the paroles and pardons chairman. He made a recommendation in recognition of what apparently Mitchell had talked to the President about. And the end result was that they got a recommendation from the Pardons and Parole Board, or Commutation Board, of May 10th, 1973, to let me out before Christmas. And that came about by computation of my time served, my good time, my extra good time, which let me out on December 22nd.
What year?
1971. Now, immediately thereafter, when he sent that recommendation to the White House, since again a matter of record, Dean says that he intercepted it and tried to imply, and Mitchell refused to accept the statement of Dean, tried to imply that he and Mitchell had talked about changing Mitchell's original letter of recommendation to the President to the 1980 restriction, and Mitchell refused it in 2 affidavits and then sworn testimony. That just never happened.
The original letter from Mitchell did not have the 80 restriction.
It got it in March 10th, 1973. And that, furthermore, he called in Colson and Mullenhoff and talked to them prior to sending it in to the President, the 1980 restriction, without talking to the Attorney General or without talking to the President. And said that the way that he did not talk to the President was that he had Larry Traylor, who was head of the Pardons and Commutation Board, simply rewrite the recommendation of Mitchell without consulting Mitchell or without letting Mitchell see the rewriting to 1980 restriction, but also said that he kept it confidential and private even from anybody in the White House or the press until 14 minutes after I was out of jail. Because they were convinced that if I knew the 1980 restriction was there, that would not have accepted the commutation as it was drafted. So they didn't tell the warden, they didn't tell the Director of Bureau of Prisons that this 1980 was in there, knowing that I would have refused to accept it if I'd have known it was in there, because I only had to go to 1974.
Now, who is they? They didn't tell.
Well, Mitchell, Dean, Larry Traylor, the Director of Bureau of Prisons, Carlson, didn't tell the warden, who was the only man I had contact with, and the chief caseworker, Danoff, about the 1980 restriction, and admit they didn't tell him.
Didn't the president sign this?
Oh, sure, but along with 212 other ones.
You didn't read it?
Never, I couldn't read it. It wasn't in there. It wasn't anything I signed.
Your attorneys didn't read it?
Nobody knew. They admit nobody knew. Until 14 minutes after I was out of prison, did they announce to the public, to myself, to the warden, my attorneys, that this was a 1980 restriction. I found out about it hours later when I arrived in St. Louis through a news commentator.
That doesn't sound like Hoffa.
When I went to the Robson, head of the parole board, after the holidays, he didn't know about it. Nobody had informed him. And he had to call and talk to Washington and find out what they were talking about. And then on the 14th day of January, I received through the mail the 1980 restriction. I refused to sign it because I had asked the warden specifically before I left the prison, was there any other restriction besides March 10th, 1973, and he said no, after calling Washington.
Who was behind the 1980 restriction?
In my opinion, Dean, Wallenhoff, Olson, and Fitzsimmons.
A conspiracy.
I would say it certainly was an understanding of every one of them getting a piece of pie that they wanted, and they used Dean to get the pie.
Do you think Richard Nixon knew of that 1980 restriction when he signed your paper?
Don't believe it. Don't believe it. One of these days I'll prove it.
Do you think, or straight question, was there any financial deal made with President Nixon to get you out of prison?
Fitzsimmons says no. He says he only gave him $14,000.
There was no other political...
I was in prison. I talked to nobody. Had no way of knowing whether there was or there wasn't.
You had no one approach Richard Nixon on your behalf?
Oh, of course I did. I had the people who sent petitions.
Well, let me qualify that.
People who sent the letters and personal visits.
All right, you had no one approach Richard Nixon and say, look, $100,000 goes into your campaign?
Absolutely not. Positively not. I did not.
So there was no offer of whether
I
you
had
thought about it?
nobody go there. If anybody went there, without my knowledge. Even though there's a floating around a statement that Dorfman, during his trial in New York, said that he had a receipt signed by Mitchell for a large sum of money as a contribution.
How much?
Now, that's never been proven. I think Overdrive said $150,000. I'm not sure. But that's never been proven either.
What about Frank Fitzsimmons?
What the hell about him? You know, you said he's a double-crosser. That's all there is to it.
You said...
Man, I took off the truck, made him an officer of the Union, saw that for the first time in his life he had more than one suit, lived in a decent home, had an expense account, kept raising him up through the ranks of labor, and finally General Vice President at the convention. And when I went to jail, he took over the presidency, and then he became power hungry, and accepted the belief that he was a great labor leader, and came about doing what he did in the 1980 restriction, in my opinion.
How did you get the belief that he was a great labor leader?
How the hell do I know? How do a lot of people get? Look at some of the congressmen and senators we got. They couldn't spell a rat backwards, couldn't make a living. They get elected, and for Christ's sake, they're on TV yakking around, telling you how to run the world and run your own life, and couldn't run their life or their own family's life. Same thing with him. They look in the mirror too often. They grow by inches, sideways and up and down, but don't grow and their head gets fatter, but they don't get any more sense than they had before.
Recently I asked you about Frank Fitzsimmons, and you said he's gone nuts, that's all.
Well, I think he's gone completely power nuts, that's my opinion.
And I asked you what happened to the friendship, and you said somebody took him to the mountain.
No question about that. They took him top of the mountain, showed him the valley, and he bought that alley. But he forgot the membership and forgot the officers and forgot his responsibility of the oath he took for office.
Who took him to the mountain?
I would think, in all probability, knowing what happens in Washington, I was there long enough to know, the employers, the politicians, people who wanted favors, took him to the top of the mountain, made him think he's a big man.
Anybody specific?
No, I wasn't there. If they seen him, I couldn't say it.
You told me in an earlier interview you said it was Colson.
Oh, that's just one of the many. Just one of the many. Took more than Colston to. It was one of the many. I think he took him by the hand and led him to the top of the mountain, but he held a lot of people. It was part of that parade.
To keep you out of politics?
To keep him in power and me out of power.
You gave the first loan, you say, to La Costa.
Yeah.
$10 million.
Well, somewhere around there, yeah.
How'd that come
It's been a
about?
long time ago. Well, what the hell, Mo had owned Desert Inn. He had owned other office buildings and other businesses. We loaned him money. He paid him back. He's a good businessman. When you want to go into the La Costa enterprise, real estate was booming at that time. Everybody was prosperous, and it couldn't go wrong. And he kept expanding it like any other business to meet up with the requirements. And it's a good buy today. Ain't nothing wrong with loan today.
Was Meyer Lansky pay any part of that?
Meyer Lansky had no more to do with more data than you had, in my opinion. It's all newspaper nonsense.
You good friends with Meyer Lansky?
I know him.
Ever do business with him?
Nope. Never asked me to. My opinion, he's another victim of harassment.
You don't think he's a member of organized crime?
I don't believe there's any organized crime, period. Don't believe it, never believed it. Said it since I said it for the last 40 years. Hoover said it. He's supposed to be the greatest law enforcement man in America with the means to find out. He said there was no mafia, no so-called organized crime.
No mafia?
That's what he said. That's what Hoover said.
No, McClellan said just the opposite.
Oh, what the hell, he's an idiot. Senile old man. He knows more about the mafia than any one guy in the world if he wants to tell the truth.
McClellan said in May of
Ask
58,
about Vincent Cole.
he said in 58 that you know...
Helping him. I would doubt that. You ask any cop whether or not an amateur in a crowd and with people around him, attention, whether or not he believes that he could be that accurate. I just read another guy that some damn guy wrote a new book about it. I can't remember what book it was. Josephine gave it to me, a little book about it. Where they say there was another guy there, and the ballistic guy said there was another type of bullet. Who the hell knows? Who the hell knows? It could be a freak accident. I watched the damn TV last night on that police story. But that could be true. Then that could be true. Watched SWAT last night. They killed more goddamn people than you got hair in your head. Goddamn movie, this TV here kills over 49 guys a night over here, for Christ's sake, a Monday night to Tuesday night. 49 guys they kill. So who the hell knows what you can do? Was it not last night? Just started killing people. Nobody knew why the goddamn fool killed people. Then they finally catch him, kill him. So he's dead, they can't tell why he killed him. People go off their rocker, who can tell?
What about John Kennedy? You think Oswald did it?
They have another book on that too, and I saw that simulation of the assassination on TV, which made more sense to me than what the report did. When we went out in the desert and practiced 3 guys, that made more sense to me. I know I shoot deer, and I shoot at deer, and I've missed a hell of a lot more deer than I ever hit. And I'd be goddamn. You could tell me a guy can figure out how to be right at the right moment at the right time with a rifle and hit a guy, you're a good man.
With 3 shots from a rifle that allegedly couldn't fire the shots in the amount of time.
I don't care, you know. I don't care. I see guys shooting a deer, and I see crack shots shooting a deer. By God, they miss them. They miss them. And the deer's about like a moving car. Ain't much difference, hell of a lot.
What about Jack Ruby?
Well, I seen that. I was in Tennessee when I seen that guy. I was watching the damn TV when I seen the guy shoot him. So he must have shot him.
Why?
That's a $64 question. Nobody will ever be able to answer. A fanatic, maybe. They say, could be true, that he was publicity nuts. That could be true, too. Who the hell knows?
What about Clay Shaw?
You mean the guy down in Tennessee prison?
No, Clay Shaw, the guy in New Orleans. The CIA frontman that Garrison went after.
Oh, who the hell knows? Who the hell knows? Well, we tried to prove that Park was involved in it. And they wouldn't let us go through follow that line of cross-examination. That's a hell of a good. I read another article, which made sense to me. That Castro was involved in it. Well, that made sense to me. They tried to kill him, according to CIA testimony, several times. Makes sense to me. Said they killed Trujillo, didn't they? They admitted. They supplied the guns, supplied the know-how, supplied the escape. I mean, how more people did they kill? Who the hell knows? Who the hell knows?
What about Jim Garrison? You think he's kook?
No sirree, Jim Garrison's a smart man. Goddamn smart attorney. Anybody thinks he's a kook is a kook himself.
That he believes it was definitely a conspiracy.
He may have some evidence nobody else has. He may have it.
What was Richard Nixon doing in Dallas that day?
Who the hell can tell that either? Who the hell can tell that?
You think Nixon had anything to do with it?
Oh, shit. No more than you and I.
Think Nixon had anything to do with the Bobby Kennedy assassination?
Hell no. Hell no. He ain't that kind of a guy.
How about Martin Luther King?
What the hell? Hoover was the guy that tapped him, wasn't he?
Who?
Hoover was the guy who was after Martin Luther King.
Allegedly.
Wasn't Nixon?
What about George Wallace? Wallace said himself he thinks Nixon did it.
You mean had him shot? That's bullshit.
But yet the plumbers show up in Arthur Bremer's apartment within hours of the assassination attempt?
I don't believe that. That's good political fodder, but I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
Oh, the plumbers knew where Bremer's apartment was.
Who the hell knows? They had a check on every kook in the country. You know that. What you've been reading. They got a file on every kook there is, and he was a kook in Wisconsin. So they probably had kept track of him when he was traveling.
Where did he get the money to travel now? What the hell is a dishwasher?
Where the hell did the guy get the money to try to shoot me? Ain't any different, is he? Went from Cincinnati to New York, worked as a busboy, got enough money to get a ticket and a gun, and come to Chattanooga to come down to Nashville try to kill me. What's unusual about that?
What is it then?
You mean try to kill me?
Yeah.
I don't know his goddamn name. I forgot it now. It's a matter of record.
Mr. Kook?
Well, a little different situation. Everybody was searched that went in and out of the courtroom. Women and men. How the hell did he get him with a gun?
What do you suspect?
I suspect that, that the marshals knew more than they told her told. That's my own opinion. And I think circumstantial evidence would prove that. But how the hell are you going to make it after a statement? Can't prove it.
You say Ed Parker told you he knew that the guy had a gun?
He said it public. It was Bill Buffalino. And a record.
It was a pellet gun, right?
Yeah. Which will go through a 2x4. Killed you just as sure as the 22. I looked up and I seen him. And I ducked down, come up, broke his jaw, and took the gun away from him. That's all that happened to him.
Where were all the marshals?
I don't know, behind file cabinets, on the table, same as the judge, the same as my lawyers, the same as the government lawyers. They all come pouncing out after it was over with, and the marshal came with a blackjack, and I got the guy knocked out, and he hits the poor bastard. I said, "Now you dumb bastard, get away from me. You know the guy's knocked out already."
At this point of the conversation over the trial and what was happening with that whole scene there, it seemed like things flashed in his head, and Jimmy took off on several things that were bothering him about the Nashville trial.
Sure, a lot of suspicious things happen. What the hell? that trial, who the hell stole Jack Schiffer's briefcase? We know it was the government. We had a chambermaid tell us who came in and got it. Court wouldn't let us put it in a record.
Well, the government also accused you of having Bernie Spindell rig a fake wiretap in the room. So
no, there wasn't a fake wiretap, because if they knew it was a fake wiretap, he'd have got conspiracy. They knew it was the truth. Because he had names of people, where they were located, the whole goddamn thing, license numbers, everything else.
Who was the attorney that found it in his room?
From what?
The alleged bug, or this bug?
Jim, up there, Bill Buckley, Jim Haggerty. They found the bug. Called the fire department, police department. Coincidentally, again, upstairs the FBI has a room on the one side of them, the FBI has a room on the other side of them, on the floor above them, and down below they got the room beside them and a room on the other side of them. But it wasn't their bug. Well, fuck, what did they do with 4 rooms? And it was a government bug.
But yet, what's his name in his book, Sheridan, said that it was done so you would incense Haggerty.
Incense Haggerty?
Get him pissed off. To think that the government would tax him.
What the hell did that have to do with the question? If it was a government bug, and there's 4 FBI guys in 4 rooms, what the hell did Jim Haggerty do with having put them up there and putting the bug in there? What did he have to do with that? And they can't deny they had the 4 rooms. Never did deny it. How the hell did the bug get there? Yeah, how you gonna prove it? We know Jones was a wiretapper. He admitted under examination he was a professional wiretapper. And then he took the executive fifth. And we couldn't cross-examine him. First time in the history of the goddamn United States Senate. They called a special meeting of the goddamn Senate and got a rule passed giving every employee of the McClellan Committee executive privilege not to testify. You ever hear that before? Never before or after in the history of the United States did it happen. Yet that's what happened. So who the hell is going to tell me that Eddie Jones didn't wiretap because we caught him right in the act?
What's the most important thing in the world to you?
Oh, my family. No question about that.
What takes precedent, money or power?
Power. Power gives money. You got both. You got power, you got money. Whether you have money, not power.
Power. We know one thing for sure. Even Jimmy Hoffa didn't have the power to stop someone from obviously killing him. On July 30th, 1975, Jimmy Hoffa went to a meeting, says the FBI, set up by Tony Giacalone, allegedly for Hoffa to mend fences with New Jersey teamster Tony Provenzano. Jimmy never came back from that meeting. According to sources, the FBI believes Jimmy was picked up by Chucky O'Brien, a self-proclaimed Hoffa foster son. Also in that car were New Jersey brothers Salvador and Gabriel Briguglio, along with Thomas Andretta. They, the FBI feels, acted on the orders of Hoffa enemy Tony Provenzano and abducted and killed Jimmy Hoffa. Some of the players in this real-life mystery are no longer around. Frank Fitzsimmons died of cancer. Tony Provenzano checked out with heart problems. Salvador Sally Bugs Briguglio also had some heart problems. Lead slugs in the chest as he was blown away in front of a New York restaurant. No one has been charged in the Hoffa case, which is still, says the FBI, an active investigation. And Jimmy Hoffa, has never been found.